The Absolute and Manifestation, delivered in London 1896, Part 1. The one question that is most difficult to grasp in understanding the Advaita philosophy, and the one question that will be asked again and again, and that will always remain, is how has the infinite, the Absolute, become the finite? I will now take up this question, and in order to illustrate it, I will use a figure. Here is an absolute, and this is the universe. The absolute has become the universe. By this is not only meant the material world, but the mental world, the spiritual world, heavens and earth, and in fact everything that exists. Mind is the name of a change, and the body the name of another change, and so on, and all these changes compose our universe. This absolute has become the universe by becoming through time, space, and causation. This is the central idea of Advaita. Time, space, and causation are like the glass through which the absolute is seen, and when it is seen on the lower side, it appears as the universe. Now we are at once gather from this that in the absolute there is neither time, space, nor causation. The idea of time cannot be there, seeing that there is no mind, no thought. The idea of space cannot be there, seeing that there is no external change. What you call motion and causation cannot exist where there is only one. We have to understand this and impress it on our minds that what we call causation begins after, if we may be permitted to say so, the degeneration of the absolute into the phenomenal, and not before that our lie, our will, our desire, and all these things always come after that. I think Schopenhauer's philosophy makes a mistake in its interpretation of Vedanta, for it seeks to make the will everything. Schopenhauer makes the will stand in the place of the absolute. But the absolute cannot be presented as will, for will is something changeable and phenomenal. And over the line drawn above time, space, and causation, there is no change, no motion. It is only below the line that external motion and internal motion called thought begins. There can be no will on the other side, and will therefore cannot be the cause of this universe. Coming nearer, we see in our own bodies that will is not the cause of every movement. I move this chair, my will is the cause of this movement, and this will becomes manifested as muscular motion at the other end. But the same power that moves the chair is moving the heart, the lungs, and so on, but not through will. Given that the power is the same, it becomes will when it rises to the plane of consciousness, and to call it will before it has risen to this plane is a misnomer. This makes a good deal of confusion in Schopenhauer's philosophy. A stone falls and we ask why. This question is possible only to the supposition that nothing happens without a cause. I request you to make this very clear in your minds, for whenever we ask why anything happens, we are taking for granted that everything that happens must have a why. That is to say, it must have been preceded by something else which acted as the cause. This precedence and succession are what we call the law of causation. It means that everything in the universe is by turn a cause and an effect. It is the cause of certain things which comes after it, and it itself is effect of something else which has preceded it. This is called the law of causation and is the necessary condition of all our thinking. We believe that every particle in the universe, whatever it may be, is in relation to every other particle. There has been much discussion as to how this idea arose. In Europe, there have been intuitive philosophers who believed that it was constitutional in humanity. Others have believed it came from experience, but the question has never been settled. We see later on what the Vedanta has to say about it. But first, we have to understand this, that the very asking of the question why presupposes that everything round us has been preceded by certain things and will be succeeded by certain other things. The other belief involved in this question is that nothing in the universe is independent, that everything is acted upon by something outside itself. Interdependence is the law of the whole universe. In asking what caused the absolute, what an error we are making. To ask this question, we have to suppose that the absolute also is bound by something, that it is dependent on something, and in making this supposition, we drag the absolute down to the level of the universe. For in the absolute, there is neither time, space, nor causation. It is all one. That which exists by itself alone cannot have any cause. That which is free cannot have any cause, else it would not be free but bound. That which has relatively cannot be free. Thus, we see the very question why the infinite became the finite is an impossible one, for it is self contradictory. Coming from subtleties to the logic of our common plane to common sense, we can see this from another side when we seek to know how the absolute has become the relative. Supposing we knew the answer, would the absolute remain the absolute? It would have become relative. What is meant by knowledge in our common sense India? It is only something that has become limited by our minds, that we know, and when it is beyond our mind, it is not knowledge. Now, if the absolute becomes limited by the mind, it is no more absolute. It has become finite. Everything limited by the mind becomes finite. Therefore, to know the absolute is again a contradiction in terms. That is why this question has never been answered, because if it were answered, there would be no more be an absolute. A God known is no more God. He has become finite like one of us. He cannot be known, he is always the unknowable one.